Alright guys, so some time ago someone asked if I would do a quick sketch and show how I turn them into 3D models, and so this is what we're going to do in this video. We're going to be doing this in Krita first, and we'll start a new document to get started. Just a 4K document, 8-bit, nothing special here. Do a new layer, and you can sketch with whatever you want, hard round brush, soft round brush, it doesn't really matter. The main idea is that you just want to start playing around with your basic primitive shapes, trapezoids, squares, circles, triangles, and you start to build these things up by creating compounds. So if you do like a rectangle with, I don't know, a triangle right here or something like that, this is the idea. And so eventually you'll find that these shapes, if you round out an edge, they become a little bit more interesting looking perhaps, but you can also like do bevels in the corners at different rates. So you can do like little bevels, but you can do really large bevels as well. All right, and that's going to give you a kind of a different look overall to a shape as well. And so as you start free sketching, you know, no brush smoothing perhaps, and you just want to like lay out some lines or whatever. This goes a long ways, but whenever you're working with something in 2D, you can see I'm just staying very loose and gestural-like, but I'm still identifying little shapes throughout this process and kind of creating those ideas of curves to them anyways. But this can go on for quite a bit of time until you start to tighten up a sketch, right? So you might do like a loose sketch, and then you might turn on some brush smoothing, and then you might go ahead and start doing a little bit of a tighter sketch anyways at a certain point. And you might want to go with this as opposed to that loose one if you're going to try to model it anyways. You're trying to avoid making things like paradoxes and stuff like that anyways. So, but for the most part, you can see we're starting to work out some kind of form here for the most part. And it might be kind of interesting at this point, but there's a lot of questions still left. There's a lot of detail that needs to be added, and so you will spend some time doing a sketch before you generally want to go off and start modeling it. Now, also, I'm going to take both of these and move them real quick. You could, at the same time, start doing some lines up. If you wanted to try to lay this out as a top view as well, you could potentially do that. Use the mirror tool. And you'll see here, we can actually start to kind of figure out what's going on here with this shape overall. And say our symmetry line, we might just start lining things up and then figuring out what's what and where's where and how it all exists with each other, basically. So we could do a top view down, is what I was getting at. So you can see here, this one would go to there, and maybe it comes down and out. Wraps up. This little centerpiece here also is in alignment, so it's kind of maybe doing something like that. It goes to a point perhaps, or stays something like this. Let's go to the line and stop. There we go. This one here, so this might tuck back all the way down like that. Right, so basically we can start creating both views if we needed them. The more accurate you are with this, obviously the better of a time you'll have when trying to sketch this kind of stuff out. So this might be a point here that I'm going to go to from here. So we might do that. Can make the front a little bit more blunt, perhaps. You see where we're going with it? And let's take this one out through there. That would go possibly back a little bit, something like that. All the way to the edge, I guess. Use a line tool if you want. There's nothing wrong. You can use a line tool here in Krita by holding V. Just use it at any time, pretty much. Get it going. I got a shortcut where I pull it up as well. All right, so if you had to add wings to this or whatever the case, you know, you might want to do that on a separate layer so that way you can do that at some point. I like to just imagine a little spot in here that has a wing in it. Generally speaking, is what I go with. So if you're doing vehicles, that is. And then, of course, the bottom sides, you wouldn't be able to see those necessarily. Maybe you'd see a little bit of them, but maybe not a whole lot. So maybe something like that. Right, so you can do this. You can create your own reference images very quickly. All right, that's just a more precise way of doing it, perhaps. Now, you can also just kind of freely sketch very quickly. And you can use something like a soft round brush even. So in this case, I'll use the airbrush. Turn brush smoothing off. This is something I prefer doing a lot of times, where you approach it more from a painterly method, where you can just kind of sketch and doodle at the same time and shade, and you can end up with some rather interesting designs out of something like this. Let's do some curves here. But I can use a lighter tone, use white in this case, and start to build up some form to these. So, just lightly going through it. It'll start out fuzzy, blurry, and then eventually you can start building up form, right? So you can do that undoubtedly very fast and create some cool stuff. It's just going to be fuzzy until you tighten up all the edges. And so even on something like this, you could do a new layer if you wanted to start going through this and adding additional highlights to kind of build up the form, doing it on a new layer so we don't accidentally erase our lines. We could put the shading below all of that perhaps, and so we still have the line art above. Use a darker tone. So now we can start to build this up in this manner. This is not like a proper way of doing this, by the way. Normally, what you would more than likely want to do is do the loose sketch, then do a tight sketch where it's a lot more proper. And then you would probably do some like fills of the different shapes and then turn those into clipping groups so that way you can actually start working on it with proper shading if you're going to full illustration. But if you're going to 3D, sometimes this is all you really need to get the project going anyways. Start working it out, right? So we could shade the top one, but we're going to skip that for this video anyways. So here's the thing. You do have to establish, do a new layer for it. You do have to establish the size of something. So a stick figure alone could work out quite well to establish the size of something, right? So you just do a little stick figure like so. And I'll show you how this works out here in a second, but you need a Control-T and scale it. Maybe it's like a little drone, so he's a little bit bigger. Maybe it's really big. Who knows? You can do something like this. All right. So this is all way off center. Let's move it over real quick, actually. A little bit. Okay. And now we can actually just take this image. We can edit and copy merged. Okay. Press Control-A. You select everything. Copy merged. And that's all you need to do. Save the file, of course. But when you go to Blender and you're doing a new document, you delete the default cube. I'm going to hit tilde key, go to the right side. I'm going to press Shift-A. There's an add-on that lets you paste into Blender. So when I go to Shift-A, press Image, you'll see that I have this add-on, Image Paste add-on. It's a link on my website. You can do paste from clipboard as reference, okay? And boom. Because we copied it to the clipboard, we now paste it from the clipboard and as a reference image. So it's all set up and ready to go. We can turn the opacity down if we need to. And I like to push them back personally. It's just, and also on the back side, I'll usually set it to front only so I don't see the back. All right. And so what does this little stick figure have to do with everything? Well, if you have a character reference, you can export, say, like one of the characters from Unity or Unreal Engine or whatever the case. They should be around 1.8 meters tall, generally speaking. You can see if we bring this guy in, he's about 1.8 meters tall. And I can scale this reference image until we have the same height here for the most part. And so it's not going to be precise or nothing like that, but it's an approximate scale to the overall vehicle or whatever you might be creating. You can use either a person or you can use things like hands or whatever you might have that's a scale reference. Could be useful. So depends on how big or small something is. And so I can just rotate him real quick, send him out to the side. So he's somewhere in here now. All right. And so now you can start modeling on this stuff. Use a plane. So that whole subdivision modeling practice with the plane, it applies here. You don't have to subdivision model it necessarily. Hit Alt-Z, grab some vertices, and just start pulling them around. And I should be able to hit E and start extruding. We'll do the overall form, I think, first. So we've more or less created our own concept, our own design. And this is our guide, right? Like we can do what we want with this thing. So there's no right and wrong answers as far as it's concerned when it comes to depth and things like that. But we certainly can grab like a vertex, for example, and maybe trace this edge here for a second. Start working out what it is we're creating here and how much depth it has, among other things. So let's do something like that. That's a possibility. Maybe I want this edge to come out a little bit further. So we can do that. Pull this one through here. And so that can become a face. We can grab all that, press F. There we go. And now go ahead and maybe start attaching some of this together. Just trying to figure out how I want to do this. Let's select these. Oh, let's do this. Press F in there. So we can select all three of these. Press F. The loop cut. G twice that one up. We'll do another loop cut right there. So this might come down right about here. And we're going to ignore the window line for just a second, although I do want to get that at some point, but if it was a window anyways. But we can start modeling on it, guys. That's the main idea, right? Like, we can now do what we want to do to this. See, that one worked out okay-ish. Let's just bring that down for a second. We can just keep filling to the back, maybe. That one's not going to fill correctly, so we select all three, press F. Dissolve these for a second, because it's a straight edge. It doesn't really need anything yet, so. Alright, and this edge here, let's go ahead and bring that underneath. So press E and Z, E and X. Do something like that. We can move it backwards if needed. See, it's all going to be tapered like that, right? Or shifted anyways, and could just bring that whole section back, maybe. Not exactly what I was going for, so let's do a loop cut here and push that back in. On X, yeah, something more like that. So you can see our symmetry is way over here, by the way, so we do need to make sure our origin point is right there. I'm going to use Symmetrize with Mesh Machine, but you could use a mirror modifier. And now I can run through this project a lot faster. Blocking it out this way than trying to think of doing all this stuff by hand as a maybe free modeling. Now, some of you guys at least, you'll learn to appreciate free modeling. It's actually a lot of fun where you just going to town with vertices, pushing and pulling things into shape. But a lot of times, I find that in 2D at least, you can come up with ideas a lot faster because you're not worried about doing bevels and merging vertices and shifting them around and changing the view and all that. So you'll learn to appreciate the 2D aspects of this as well. Definitely make things happen rather rapidly. You see how long that sketch took. It didn't, like, we could have been done way faster than that, maybe with a very loose sketch that, you know, a loose sketch you can just start modeling on it. And figuring out all your additional edits you need during the 3D process, but it takes some time to get to that point as well. Used to doing that. So you can see here, like, we did have some depth guidelines already, but we're not using those just yet, I guess. So the main thing here, though, is that, you know, if we wanted to, we could maybe even try using it right now. It's not guaranteed that this is going to line up very well because we flew through it a little bit too fast, perhaps, but you see I drew that little middle line so that I would find the symmetry hopefully a little bit easier. Okay, and so I don't change the size of the reference. It should be in alignment, so it shouldn't be a big deal. But now I do get the opportunity to at least go in here and say, like, this is not in the right area. See, we're kind of going off of just whatever we felt like doing as opposed to maybe trying to line things up. And now we have a chance to actually start lining things up. And just moving them out to the left or the right, and try to keep it simple. Don't get too caught up in all. Okay, and pick back here. Okay, we definitely can see that we got the bottom here, kind of making it a little bit harder, perhaps, to see what we're doing. But it's not too bad, anyways. Right, and so that window does come out to about there. I don't know what that's going to actually do. Yeah, it's not the right one. So we're going to need an additional edge somewhere in here with a point here, I think. Just to figure out where that actually is going. We're way off, apparently. It's like something like this. that we need. Keep grabbing the bottom ones, not the top ones, but symmetrize it. See what we got going on. Whoa, it's scary. All right, so let's try and change that. It's close-ish, but it's not. It's obviously not right, right? So this one here, this one, and this one's got to go back in. Appears to be about correct. Which one's really messed up? This one? I think this one goes out here like that. Yeah, it's looking like this one goes all the way down here, perhaps. So we can shift things, of course. It doesn't have to be exactly the same as the reference, but these are definitely off. Yeah, there we go. It's looking a little bit more correct, I would say. Just a tiny bit. All right. Is that on the bottom? Yeah, it is. Okay. Sometimes it's better to break it into like individual little sections, not doing the whole thing at one time, but we'll be all right with this for now. Definitely can start working it out. Okay, so you see kind of how this is going. I'm going to borrow a face here, just duplicate it up. We'll start working with this one right here. It's going to be a separate object. Press E, 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 E. We'll just do the top section real quick. So sometimes when you're like you got multiple objects, we're in edit mode, it's one thing, but it's got multiple pieces to it. You can take all of it, press P, separate by loose parts, and it'll go into its individual pieces. So if you have a lot more than this, that actually works out quite well. But it's way easier to model things like little section by little section, in my opinion, instead of trying to do the whole overall. So, but this is the process of blocking out. This is what you're going to go through. I'm trying to create or make something like this anyways. And so you can see this is actually the side edge here, and the middle is, yeah, the middle's all right. So we'll do a loop cut here. We'll pull all these ones down. This is going to flatten, so S and Z, you can flatten it. Potentially pull that down more. It looks like it might become a solid piece all the way through, but this is where taking your time sketching, solving these issues would definitely go a long way. It's not quite right, but it's close. It's just not there. And this back section here, what I want to do is I'm going to GG twice, hold Alt, and then go back out this way. So I'm going to hit K and C, and knife cut here, and then just delete all that, whatever that stuff is. And so now I can symmetrize all that. We have this nice little setup here for the most part on this back section. It does look like it doesn't get quite that thin, perhaps, but from the side anyways, it does. But we still have creative flexibility here. Like we're not, you know, we did like a really rough sketch, for example, and we have the ability to go through and change things as needed. So I really want to just bring these ones in, I think, right there a little bit. Maybe something like that. I don't know, something's just a little bit off there. I don't like it. All right, so let's take this section here. And you can hit Alt-Q to switch between objects very rapidly as well. Let's take this section and just pull it up and out. It matches a little bit better. Yeah, something like that. Okay. There we go with that. So, the bottom section here, let's see. Pull this in. We'll add a loop cut here. So we pull it in a little bit further and have a little curve to it. This section we can press E and Z. All right, we'll just connect these two faces here. Like that. Symmetrize. All right. And that down a bit. Let's go ahead and steal this face, separate it as a duplicate. Use machine tools for that, it's a lot easier. Grab the edge here, just extrude it out. And see what I can do with it. Okay. Not real sure how big this piece is, how it's going to be laid out exactly, so I just want to work the profile of it, I guess, is the best way to put that. Just want to see what I can do with the profile. Alright, and shrink towards the back. Alright, obviously we're not going to model this whole thing here in this video, but this main idea is this is how you can start. We can set on vertex snapping to hold control to use that. And this is definitely, you know, I get a lot of requests for screencast keys, and I use custom keys, but on top of that, these videos really aren't meant to be for beginners anymore. Like sometimes I still try to do things for beginners, but not really what I'm going for with these, because I asked a while ago for a lot of the guys watching the channel like what they wanted videos on, more complex stuff or simpler stuff, and a lot of them wanted, yeah, more advanced stuff, so that should have joined there. I can dissolve, okay, and over it goes. So we'll have to combine these pieces together later on. That's the main thing. You can / to isolate sometimes if you need to. You do things like this, perhaps. I'm gonna pull that out. I don't know what's going on here. Why it went up there so far, but it did. Okay, I cannot select that for some reason. I have to turn X-ray on, I guess. Now, something like this, you might even get away with grid fills on things like this. This one I don't think would work out too well, but we'll try it. Yeah, it's pretty close. You have to tweak the settings around sometimes. Okay, that's what I'm looking for actually right there. Something like that anyways. Alright. Now if you haven't noticed what I've been doing this whole time, for the most part, I've been modeling in quads, right? The reason I wanted to do that is just to prove a point that when you use quads, right, we weren't planning on using subdivision, but we were modeling quads. It will subdivide. Quads subdivide very well, usually. So you can imagine just working out a subdivision mesh or a quad mesh that's very close and very quickly could possibly subdivide. Making some tweaks and adjustments along the way as needed. You can definitely make a very good shell of a spaceship very fast this way. Alright, and so I'm not going to do that one like that. So let's do through here. Symmetrize. That should hold the front a little bit differently. There you go. Do F2 add-on there. You select a vertex with the F2 add-on, right? You can hit F and it'll push it out, something like that anyways. Now we got something like that. Cool. What we can do is we can keep working it basically till we get to this point where like we can combine it together and then we can blow it apart, and then we can just keep working it until we have a full build. But you got to think about what you're doing with the faces along the way, unfortunately. So like something like this, maybe I try to send it out that way. So I can have a quad there. I'm going to create a triangle, but that triangle when it subdivides shouldn't be too bad. Turns into an end pole, basically. Could be better in that area, perhaps. Anyways, so yeah, eventually if you're going to combine them together, it's easier to do it with a boolean. So you would take all of this here, and I'll just grid fill that one. This is a manifold mesh. We'll be okay with this. So I just want to make sure there's no errors. Using machine tools cleanup feature, I can check it real quick. Look, sometimes it doesn't catch everything. Sometimes you got to find the additional issues and try to work them out. But all right, so this little face down here, we can definitely work it out just by going across the symmetry and then dissolving that. Symmetrizing, there you go. So making manifold mesh where it's all solid, right? Go through this process. Take all of this here, shoot it out, send it all the way over, symmetrize it, so we do that. And grid fill this, grid fill this. We'll subdivide like so now. You see it rounds the bottom, perhaps. This piece can do pretty much virtually the same thing if we wanted. Oh, you know what? Actually, it's going to be a little bit more challenging on this one. No, it's not. We can grid fill the whole thing, actually. But there you go. So we're going to get rid of the subdivisions. I just want to point something out here. Is that sometimes you do work them back together. It's easier to do it with booleans usually. But what we're looking for is just matching density of the mesh. Like right now, they're pretty much matching. I could easily combine these, okay? But if it was like, this one was like this, that wouldn't be matching, right? Like we need to have them have a relatively similar face count throughout the areas of the model. So we could do Boolean union. I'm going to use bool tools. Add-on, it comes with Blender, Control-Shift-B. You can do auto Boolean union, and that's a destructive Boolean, okay? And so it means there's no modifier. It's all combined together now. And sometimes it'll cut perfectly. Sometimes it'll have internal faces. You got to go through and clean up. Actually, this looks like it has one. Yep. So there you go. Sometimes that happens. You got to try to delete those sometimes. You might get extra edges on things that also you don't really want. I have to merge vertices in different areas. You can see how that's starting to work out. Maybe I need a loop cut here. I want to drag this out a little bit. Fill there. Symmetrize. Maybe I want to do the F2 add-on here so it goes to the center. Oh, we got some faces back there. I didn't see them. All right, so we do have to clean it up, unfortunately. It's the name of the game with booleans usually. See over here, we have nothing going on that's good. So our knife cut to there. Take all of that, and we're going to join it to there, like so. You can see that face flipped or something, or did it just merge out or something? All right, something happened to that face. It disappeared. All right, fine. We'll put it back. So there we go. This one can go up to this corner. Not a big deal. All right. For the most part, machine tools cleanup features. See if it finds any issues, and it does back here. There's a face in there. Delete those two faces. There's no vertices left. There should be good now. Okay, cool. So that's a little bit of a pain, right? This one, get rid of the subdivision on it. Boolean union it. Destructive Boolean, I have a shortcut for it. Same, what we just did the same one basically. So if you do have a chance to select the areas like this, using Mesh Machine, you can select all of this where you need it. Using the shift click, alt click, shift click, alt click, or you can do like shortest path selections. Actually, we're not having much luck with shift clicking and all that, so we'll just do control click, and we'll select all the way around the border here. Hopefully this gets everything I need. You can use Mesh Machine and do a Boolean cleanup, okay? And so you mouse wheel up and down, you can pick which ones are going to stay good and which ones are going to collapse. In this case, I think we're going to collapse the curve shape here at the bottom by the looks of it. It looks like that one might work out better. But it's not a guarantee either. We might go the other way with it. That might actually work out better. Okay. Yeah, I kind of like this setup. You see that one at the bottom there changing a lot? I don't like that doing that to that little point like that. Okay, symmetrize it. There we go. It got rid of it a little bit. All right, so whatever. We've managed to clean it up for the most part very fast. I mean, it still has issues, obviously. Like there's little vertices here or there. And we could definitely go through, start working some of those things out. So I want to go along this face here outwards. So I'm going to use that face with the plus sign here, get the face. Now we can do, if you look at it, move tool. Let's see if we can actually pull it out on these two here. Maybe do something like that. This is technically okay, but I don't really care for it. I'd rather run to kind of a triangle up here. This one we can redirect like this back through there. Now this will combine out to there, and got kind of an extra edge here, don't we? You know what? So we won't do that redirect there. We'll send it out instead. All that can go away. When you see a connection like that, you know, just do it. Don't think about it too heavily. I can't even see that edge very well. All right, and what else we got? This one needs to go to, has nowhere to go. Could go back to this one, or we can send that one to that one maybe. By the looks of it, this one needs to go to that one though. All right, that's good enough for me. All right, subdivide it. So all in all, like we see some topology issues here, where things just maybe aren't working the best they could, or they're not quite right. That's normal. You'll have to go through and kind of fix little areas like that potentially. Like this pole here, this E-pole does not seem to work too well. We could add like a holding edge perhaps. It might kill off some of the curvature. And we definitely want to shift that pole out of that area if possible, but these can be collapsed maybe to a point like that. We'll get a quad there. So we'll have a little reduction taking place right there. We could reduce it all the way back here even. So do something like that perhaps. Right? That's a possibility. We could work this all kinds of different ways when it comes to the subdivision. It's really not a big issue. And even something like this edge here, if we want to shift that pole, we could work this entire edge all the way down to the other side and cross the symmetry. So if we bevel this later on, mouse wheel up once perhaps, you'll see it shifts that pole up. So we're symmetrized now. Look, we don't have such a strange shading issue here, or a subdivision issue anyways. But yeah, this is a process you go through, guys. Like you can do this all day long. You can relax vertices or smooth vertices. So you can hit Control V, smooth vertices. You can go into sculpt mode with this if you wanted to. You can use the smooth tool here. You can use the grab tool instead of proportional edit perhaps. And you can make little tweaks and adjustments to this stuff rather rapidly, which is great. And on top of that, just like I did that subdivision splitting your subdivision models. One video I had, right? Get rid of the subdivision in a second. See here, this edge might go forward. This one actually might come down to where that one was. But there's nothing that stops us from, say, coming through here later on and using like a knife tool, pressing K and C, cutting out the profile of this in this area, and trying to get it going the right way anyways. And I'm going to stop it short and send it back up instead, right? So we'll have a little bit of like a rim here perhaps. It would unfortunately mean this actually runs all the way through like this though. We'll stop it there for now, but basically at some point we can do all these numbers like this, merge that down, stop it short. So we have two quads here. This one could come all the way forward, perhaps, but if we absolutely needed it there, we'd probably push that one out to it. Yeah, so we're starting to get like that little section almost ready to go here, basically. And this one here can... I don't really want to run it to that point because then you have a subdivision. The end pole takes place there. Not good. You could pull it off by doing a bevel here later, if you could. For whatever reason, I can't bevel right now. Let's try cleaning it up. Yeah, so later on, bevel perhaps, and then run through that. You'll see it, for the most part, will subdivide correctly now, the way we would expect it to. So you could leave it there temporarily as needed. All right. What else we got in here we got to deal with? The curvature here, I just don't like the curvature here. It doesn't look that right. You might want to go through and check with the zebra stripes if you're trying to create better looking surfaces, perhaps. You can see it's definitely something off here that doesn't look that good. So sculpt mode, you can change the smooth tool to surface smoothing. You could try to utilize this maybe to help alleviate some of those issues. It does deform your mesh, so use it kind of lightly, I would say. But it does seem to help it a lot of times, so I don't know. Might be something you want to do. So yeah, think of your sculpt tools as just things that help with your overall modeling in general. You can see those edges that we created, they're not going to be in that same spot now. So we definitely have to think about these things rather early on and figure out like what's working and what's not working. So I'm going to do something called surface slide. It's a machine tools feature. It's usually on the modes pie. I have a workaround for it. But when you turn that on, it adds temporary shrink wrap. And so now I can go through this and I can kind of move things around as needed. And I don't have to worry about doing too much damage to the overall form, but I get to shift some of the vertices around quite a bit. So it doesn't always work out perfectly, but it tends to work fairly well in general. So you can see I can kind of move these back into position because that's smooth anyways, kind of took them out of place. This might be messing that smooth back up as well. So just want to be careful with it anyways. Cool. All right, so we can turn surface slide off, get symmetrize, and then later on, you're just simply going to go through and you might separate it now, but you might apply a level of subdivision. Duplicate your mesh, viewport, level 1, apply, /. You might separate it like this instead. And this one tends to work out a little bit better in my opinion. So P, separate selection. And you'll see here, like this piece, anyways, add a solidify to it. This piece here, we can add a solidify to it as well if we wanted to. Let's / it real quick. Uh-oh, which one did I grab? Got everything right here in this one spot. This one, we're going to hide. This was the one we need. Okay, there we go. Solidify. I didn't hide the other one apparently. We're not going to do everything. We're just doing the rim. When we subdivide that, we'll get this. There is a little bit of a gap in here, unfortunately. You could do a bevel. I know someone mentioned this in one of the comments that you could do a bevel between these. But the solidify itself has an outer crease, which usually works out quite well. Although it doesn't get everything perfect. You can see here this little issue that the pole's kind of causing. There's a trick to that, okay? So you select your whole shape, you press I to inset, and you just inset it, okay? That'll get rid of that. Done. You can do that on this one too if you wanted to. So that creates your boundary loop more or less. But you can still use the solidifies outer crease if you wanted to, right? So that's nice to know that, right? Unfortunately, if you have sharp edges, like sharp angled corners, you're going to have to manually model those. There's a lot of ways you can deal with them, sort of. Like you can try to use creases, you can try to use inner and outers and bevels. A lot of times just going destructive tends to work out the best, so just keep that in mind. But overall, yeah, I think you get the idea here, but that we can certainly do this number like this, and we can start to create whatever we imagine, really. Any kind of hard surface, shape, object, vehicle. It's all, at the end of the day, like we can start separating other elements and creating engines and doing panels and panels that open. All that fun stuff can happen and take place pretty much at this point. And we would have that base subdivision model hopefully to work on. And so this would be making a little bit more sense by the end of it anyways. Let's see how we just do pretty much anything we want for the most part, which is awesome. And let's check the zebra stripe one more time. You can see it's not perfect, so you definitely would want to work that out a little bit more. If you wanted, you should be seeing something more like this, right? Not so dilapidated looking. Like this is looking good back here. Up here it's a little stretched out and whatnot. So we could, in sculpt mode, we can pin our mesh boundary. At this point, we can still use the smooth tool, and we can try to smooth this area with the mesh boundaries being pinned. And you can see we can actually do things like this still. So we're not changing anything on the boundary, the border of the mesh, only what's inside of it. Now, I'm not going to guarantee you that it works perfectly every time. It's probably not going to work perfectly every time, but you can definitely go through and try to maybe get a little bit more out of this, perhaps. You'll see it's actually changing the shape overall as well. So when we go back to a regular mat cap, we will in fact have, let's try something a little brighter. All right. Yeah, we will in fact have a potentially different kind of form here, almost slight bit anyways. But much cleaner though, right? So overall, hopefully you found this video interesting or informative at least, where it will help you create better looking objects overall. Now, unfortunately, we didn't inset with this piece yet, so that's not quite right. In that case, let me just try something here. Let's turn the modifiers off in edit mode. We should be able to go through, grab this, inset all of that. It might go crazy. I'm going to turn edge rail off, see if that helps. Okay. So we should be able to inset like so. These interior sections here, we don't need them. Dissolve them. All right, that should give us a nice result there for that one. So there we have it. Much tighter panel now. Still not perfect, but it's, you know, it's not too bad. Could try going into sculpt mode. I don't know how this is gonna work out, but we're about to find out. Oh, okay. Didn't like that at all. Yeah, see, it's kind of shifting right up on that edge because the border is down inside there, I think, technically, right? Mesh boundary. Okay, let's take this edge here and press H. Go to sculpt mode. All right, so now we can't hide it. And now we can modify all that around it. Now we can hit Alt H and bring all that back. Pretty interesting how that works, huh? Little tricks along the way. The bottom edge here definitely needs more work though. This ingon's kind of eating it alive, I think. So we could maybe just shift these a little bit. I don't know how that'll work out. It might skew the mesh too much, but yeah, that looks way better actually. There you go. All right, not too bad. Those ones out. Those ones out. All right, so there we go. We keep working that until we get the exact curvature we need. It's looking like down here, this one's gonna want to go out more like that, maybe. Really, I would rather run another edge right there, but. All right, guys. So yeah, that's it for this video. Hope you enjoyed, and I will check you on the next one. All right. Take care.